everybody. Thank you for coming tonight for the CV Success webinar. Tonight, we have Caryn Stivelman here. Since 2018, she has been Penn Vet's career counselor, working with first through fourth year students in all stages of their career exploration, including resume reviews, cover letter critiques, mock interviews, scholarship applications, and career coaching. She is an accomplished program administrator recognized for developing and evaluating student performance, career development, and success. Prior to Penn Vet, she worked at Penn Dental for 15 plus years as Director of Academic Affairs. She holds 2 master's degrees in bioethics and higher education and administration and a bachelor's in English, all from the University of Pennsylvania. When she is not working, you can find her enjoying time with her family, and she recently started curling at the Philadelphia Curling Club. Caryn has the compassion and motivation to see students succeed, which is why she is here today to present her workshop.
Thank you, Amanda. So hi, everyone. I'm glad you're able to make it tonight. This particular lecture is going to be divided into 3 parts. And at the end, we can have some questions and answers for whatever you have as you're looking through this. Write down those questions, put it in the chat, and we'll be able to look at those questions after. So let's talk about the resume. It's your advertisement, right? It's your chance to shine. And it's really not the time where you should be humble about what you're going to bring to the table, whether you're looking for that externship, internship, or even employment. So way back when, there was a study completed that revealed that employers only spend about 6 to 10 seconds quickly looking through a candidate's materials before determining at the get-go, should we look at them further or not? So I know that all of us want to end up in that yay pile. So it's important to organize your information efficiently and then show the relevancy of all of the experiences that you have. And that's what really the first half of my presentation is going to concentrate on. Now, one thing about the resume, a lot of people think that it's very different than a CV, and it actually is. So both of them are your advertisement, right? Of your qualifications, your strengths, your responsibilities, and of course, your accomplishments. But a CV is usually used mostly in academia and also research, where it's going to be 3 or more pages. And on the flip side, the resume is this small snapshot of what you're doing to highlight skills to an employer. Now, you don't put skills, or at least I personally don't put skills on a resume. We'll talk about that after. But also, you want to highlight your responsibilities and accomplishments. This is usually only 1 to 2 pages. So the first thing I want to talk about, hold on 1 minute, if I get this to move, there we go. We're going to get going here. So jam-packing your resume with every single little detail is going to reduce the chance that the employer's eye is going to land on what you want them to see. So think about what you want to advertise. Do you want to advertise your research or your dental experience? Maybe for many of you, you're part of all of the different dental clubs. Maybe you have leadership position there, and even study abroad for undergraduate. So here's a tip. Give the majority of your resume's real estate to the most recent and relevant information. That should really be on the first page. A resume, again, 1 to 2 pages. You're going to want your education, and whether it's the dental experience you want to show off first or the research, and then order it in the way you feel is relevant. So as I'm talking about relevancy, I don't like to tell you about rules. So instead, as you see on my screen here, I put guidelines. So it goes without saying that, punctuation, grammar, spelling, I'm not one for sticking to rules, but please, I'm begging you, we have some spell check. It's there for a reason. And when I used to be at the dental school, the one word that a lot of people spelled incorrectly on their resumes, Philadelphia. Kind of surprising since we're all living in Philadelphia, right? Or maybe Pittsburgh, but make sure you do spell everything correctly in your resume. Now, there's going to be a lot of resume formatting templates that are available online, so you could certainly go up there. Those are, it's for visual appeal, but first, we're going to really be talking about the relevant information. I also want to talk to you about verb choice. And you're like, verb choice? I'm a wordsmith. My bachelor's was actually in English. So I love working with words. I want your verbs to be very strong. And as you see here, instead of achieve, attain. So really what we're doing is we're going to elevate our word choice. So if you're doing research, instead of research project, I worked on a research project, or researched, use different words like investigated, analyzed, assessed. It just takes it to a different level. And it also sounds like you're more of an active participant rather than a passive role. So are you a doer or a helper? Okay. And again, words for you. Do you diagnose, administer? Do you monitor maybe some anesthesia if you're doing some oral surgery? Develop, that's another one. You want to keep the descriptions nice and tight, concise. Avoid assisted dentist with hygiene instruction. Rather, place that information at the end of the bullet and show something different. So maybe you want to say, educated clients about hygiene instruction alongside dentists. So instead of assisting the dentist at the beginning, place it at the end so that the strong, powerful verb is going to really take note. Now we're going to do a little bit more on formatting. This is more formatting, or the look, as I say. I would choose to use bullet points instead of these long lines of descriptive text, because if you're putting yourself in the place of a human resume reviewer, they are going to be reading dozens of resumes and they're not looking to read a biography. If you justify your dates or locations, and sometimes people do dates and locations on one of the sides, it gives your resume this clean and easy to read look. It looks very organized. You want to prioritize the information. What does that mean? Most relevant. So would you put your barista experience or your dental experience first? Obviously, if you're going for a dental job, you want the dental experience to shine and be highlighted. I would also think about your sports. And you're going to say, what does sports have to do with dental experience? It shows that you are collaborating with a team. And I think that's really relevant in and of itself under leadership or extracurricular activities. It shows, without saying it, that you're a team player. For those who have done research, you know that it takes a very different set of skills along with your critical thinking and collaborating with your team of researchers. And when I talk about quantifying information, I'm talking about how many students have you tutored? How often did you volunteer? And how much money did you raise? Now, when we put together a resume header, if you don't have a LinkedIn account or it's not updated, do not include that. Don't worry about that. But I do want to tell you that having the right header, the layout, and the relevant information are definitely steps to ensure that the hiring manager is going to read your materials. So what do I mean by a resume header? Let's take a look at our first resume header. So here's Julie Johnson. Okay. If you want to unmute yourself and call out, I'm happy to have you call out. We are informal here. So tell me what you like or you don't like about this. Are you satisfied with it? If you want, give a little thumbs up to me. Do you like this? Is this the way you would write up your resume header? Anybody have any thoughts on that, or else I'm going to keep moving along because I have a lot packed in here. No? Okay. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is delete the redundant words like email or phone. I think we all know that that's going to be the email address. The zip code is not necessary, so we're going to get rid of that. And I would ask you to just choose one email and one phone number to include on the resume. After that, go to it, have fun, and here's some ideas for other resume headers for your viewing pleasure. Now, remember, these are really, really just suggestions for ideas, because the style that you choose is going to be very, very personal. So think about this. Think about the image that you want to project, okay? Now, this gets us to that Shakespearean question, to be or not to be. My question is to add or not to add. Now, a lot of people are like, all right, objective versus professional summary or profile. Do I put this in my resume? I'm going to tell it to you straight. I'm not a fan of either, especially if you're just getting started in the field, or you're doing your, 4 years of graduate school at the dental school. You're just getting started. But if you have had an extensive history of employment, then yes, by all means, highlight. So both the objective and the profile are placed at the top of the resume right after the header, but before education. Both summarize your qualifications, and both, though, will depend on your experience, your job level, and your position. Both are optional. You do not need to use these if you do not want to, but I do think it's pretty important that I include it in our conversation here. So if you're going to a career fair, you'll definitely want to put an objective in there, because then they'll know immediately as they go through. The employers are going to meet a lot of people. We've all been to, I'm sure, a career fair or two, and there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of individuals coming up to the tables and giving resumes. So if you go to a career fair, you'll definitely want to put an objective in there, seeking externship, internship, summer position, whatnot. Okay. Now, I want to give you examples so that it's very clear what I'm doing. Now, in this example, I want you to take a moment to read it. And in this example of the objective statement, I want you to note how it highlights the position you're seeking. Seeking an orthodontic internship in an academic setting. I want to strengthen my clinical and communication skills. But the resume profile example serves a completely different purpose. You're showing what value specifically you are giving to that employer, what they can expect. It also explains the number, many times the number of years experience, 1 or 2 strengths, like in this one, broad experience in dental medicine, well-honed customer service relationships. And it's just really a summary of the skills that you bring to the company. And it's a very different feel than the first one. Now, the resumes that follow, these are real resumes that I've worked with students. They're provided by dental students, so I have their permission to use these. Anything that you see here that I'm going to tell you now is going to be able to enhance so that it makes your document come alive. You want the resume to pop. So here you see they're using bold, they're using, sometimes we'll use even italics, the fonts. Remember what I did with the look and the guidelines that I just showed you a couple of slides back. So let's talk about the GPA. That should only be in the top 10. It should be included if you're in the top 10 only. But since it does take up some real estate, look at this. It takes up 1, 2, 3, 4 lines here. And really, these are 25 lines to give all of this information. And so I am going to narrow it down to how many lines? 12 lines. Okay. So let's see how we do this. First of all, if you are in the top 10, yes, by all means, add the GPA. Matthew Cryer Honor Society, that's going to be taking precedence as well under the education. This person included her high school, so we're going to get rid of high school. Okay, high school is so long ago, so you're going to delete that. Any relevant, like any experiences with high school, just delete it. You want to concentrate on undergraduate and the dental school. I told you that we can justify our date and or location on the side. And we're we're going to get rid of those redundant words, okay? Because the graduate, we already see from the DMD or the MBE that it is a graduate level as opposed to the BS or the BA that you get from undergrad. So think about what we're doing. This is how we changed it. So after paring that down, 25 lines, we reduced it to 12. And I personally feel that it has a completely different look, feel, organization. It's easy to read. And if you wanted, you can list where it says Dean's List here. You can list your scholarships, any awards maybe under the school as well, if you wish. And if for those individuals that actually have, here's your side-by-side view so that you see. For those individuals that have done study abroad, you can put study abroad as a separate institution. Let's say you were at Edinburgh. And so you can list that under University of Pittsburgh if you did that, and then the location, and simply just study abroad. There's no degree that you get from that. It's just you're getting some requirements done. So we cut the number of lines in half, and the immediate impact that the changes, these small changes really make this education section pop. So the next section we're going to go to is usually dental experience or research. So we're going to work on research today. So think about whether you've under research, have you attended conferences? Did you give any oral or poster presentations? Do you have any publications? All of that can be listed as a bullet within the research experience. So let's take a look at this. Remember what I said before is we want to use, oh, there's no location. There's spelling mistakes in here. Let's see what else. There's some redundant words. And I don't have the where or when you presented your findings. All of this information I'd really like to have when I'm reading a resume. We want to use our powerful verbs. Instead of assisted on a research project, you can say reviewed, implementation of, investigated, analyzed, assessed, even calculated. So let's see what this looks like now. So I want you to take note of italics for the position, bold for the section header and the school. And then the choice of wording, educated and fielded questions from families about, presented poster on results at and where it was. So those additional details really, really help. This is your side-by-side. And I do like to do the side-by-side. That way you really see which one you like better. Also, don't forget to put in the principal investigator, Dr. Maya Jackson, and you see how it was listed under here. We're not going to take up an extra line for that, but we do want to add a little bit more substance with the details. Now, what you've seen before is me reducing lines. We reduced from 25 to 12 for the education, and you saw that we reduced the section for research. Now, sometimes it's not just about reducing the lines, it's about the formatting and the organization. So I'm going to give you this next example. This is a student's leadership. She was a really bright woman. It's the person you love to hate, but you love her anyway. And the reason I say that is she was involved in so many different activities. She had a very high GPA. She just had a great personality that everybody wanted to be around her. And she's just a great person. But she submitted this to me for critiquing. And what do you think when you look at this? Thoughts on this? One courageous person to unmute themselves and tell me what you think about this.
It's hard to read.
Sorry, one at a time. It was hard to read. Is that what someone said?
Yeah.
You are correct. What was the other person saying?
I was going to say, this is just such a solid block of text. I don't want to even start reading it.
Neither did I have to admit, neither did I. But I did. So I agree with both of you. Everything is so smushed together that it looks like it's this one long entry or experience, but it's really not. She has so many different things here. And for me personally, when I look at this, I really want to appreciate all of the activities the student was involved in. But you definitely need spacing in between each of these experiences. So let's also talk a little bit about this, okay? I'm going to go through a few things. Look how repetitive that is. Penn Dental. All right, you go to Penn Dental, I get it. But if you introduce the school at the beginning and under leadership and then place the activities, it feels very different. And I'll show you that in a minute. Please use your spell check. And then also I want to tell you that we want to do reverse chronological order. So everything, what that means is everything from most recent to least recent for each section. So the dates were in discombobulated order. Between you and me, I don't think that you practice rituals when the person or patient comes into your chair. So I don't think it's really necessary to highlight all of these pieces. So this is what we're going to do. And then she has community also added in under leadership. So while this was presented as one full page, 39 lines, and notice that community service and school activities, I think we could separate this into 2 sections. So let's talk about what we're going to do. And again, I'm one for details. I like the details. This is really overload. Okay. So I think you don't need to include the positions. I think what you need to do is really learn to pare it down, but make sure you get your point across. So again, list the school once at the beginning, use italics, bold, tabs to just show the clubs or the affiliations. If you have room, put one bullet. I mean, just limit it to one bullet of what your responsibilities are for that club if you hold a position. Spacing again is really key. So tell me what you think of this. You can unmute yourself if you want. This is what the section looks like when each experience is spaced out. We have our school. This is 43 lines, so I do know I did go over 4 lines, but we have our school introduction. Then you see maybe instead of bolding, then we have italicizing the club and the affiliation, your position. And again, do that for every single section so that when the resume comes together in 2 pages, it's going to look put together. It's going to look organized and it's going to look neat and it's going to look really sharp. Okay, another thing here, you notice the spacing in between each. And here for the sorority member, we really didn't need, a sorority member. I think we all know what sororities and fraternities are. We don't really need an explanation of that, just the fact that you're a member, and that's perfectly fine. I do want to give you a tip right here. Please watch your verb tenses. So if you already completed the activity, make sure that you use past tense. And if you're still in the role, make sure that you use present tense, okay? So after we have that, we now come to teaching. And I'm hoping that, some of you may be TAs or teaching assistants, or even as this one has piano teacher. But there's no need to put the course numbers if you're tutoring on the resume because it differs internally at each school. So since there was a lot of teaching at Penn Dental, I'm going to use that same tactic that we used for the leadership section just before, like putting the name of the school one time and group the courses together. And also, so that's one thing. We don't need to really go into what a piano teacher does. It's a little repetitive with that. And I don't need to hear, exactly who you got the job from or what department it was from. That's not really important. It's the subject matter in this case. So this is what it looks like now. Since University of Pennsylvania School of Dental Medicine is very lengthy, you can abbreviate it at the very beginning, spell it out once under education, and then after that, you can put in brackets UPSDM, and then use that UPSDM further throughout the resume. Okay. So this is what it looks like. And we reduced it to 13 lines. Okay. So again, before and after, I always think that the second way of doing this is a little bit more compelling for me reading this. And again, there's so many things I could just pick out. Okay, biological sciences, foundation sciences. Oh, she did a crystal and polymers chemistry. It's just easier to read and to look at. So those are the examples that I have for resumes, but I'm still not done with the resume section. Give me just a few more minutes before we pivot and do cover letters, because what I want to talk about is if you know how to write the value of your skills, then you can write the resume highlighting how the skills fit the position that you are applying for. So how do we do this? Very simple. You want to put when a person is writing up a job description from the other end, instead of you reading the job description from the other end, as we write it up, we always put the most important qualifications first. So as you think about that and they list their qualifications, make sure that you at least have the most relevant ones. And when they say preferred, if it's required, that's an end all be all. You need to have those. But if it's preferred and you don't have it, that is okay. You want to highlight the skills that you do have, not what you don't. Check for keywords in the job description, use it in the resume and the cover letter. And some skills can be worked around, and those are what we call transferable skills. So for example, when we say manage meetings, discuss a successful meeting that maybe you organized at a previous job. If you're just out of college, then talk about a club meeting that you've held or discussions that you've held. And when I talk about transferable, I hit the slide too quickly. Sorry about that. When I talk about transferable skills, I'm talking about those that can transcend, whether it's a dental student or you're doing something else in your career. Creativity, multitasking, teamwork, collaboration, technical skills, of course, leadership, and critical thinking. Okay. And again, when you have the strong resume, we're going to think about the job search. Okay. And when I talk about discussing the successful meetings, that's going to be put in the cover letter for really relevant information. We'll talk about that in a minute. So some final thoughts on your resumes. Okay. You're going to be seeing your resume again and again. So I think it's really important to get a different perspective. I don't care if it's your mom or dad or a roommate, have someone else read it so that they can maybe, nitpick of what should be changed or not, or if it reads well to them. Again, no spelling or errors in tweets. People are looking at that as well. If you are on social media sites, and Facebook, we want to make sure on your social media sites that you're posting appropriate photos, okay? So as we go on, before we hit part 2, the second part of my presentation will be about the complement, as I call it, to the resumes, cover letters. But some of you may be applying for residencies after your 4 years at dental school. So if that is the case, you do need to prepare a personal statement. So as you're reading this, I want you to think about the length, 1 page. And when you think about how you're going to address this personal statement, there's no real prompt for this. So think about your interests or your hardship, personal experiences, your values, what you're going to bring to this, and how this experience of a residency will fit on your career path. So in the first paragraph, you may want to say who you are, state your goals from the get-go, just so that you could determine whether the program is a good fit or not. If you intend to use the first 5 months of the program to determine if you want to go into oral surgery, or maybe you're doing just a general practice and maybe you want to go on to further residency, then maybe, you can state that too in this personal statement. You want to also state your skills and your interests. And you're going to use the next 2 paragraphs to really outline some unique and formative experiences that are going to prepare you or that have prepared you for this advanced training that you're looking for. You want to highlight experiences that'll separate you from the pack, really. Your leadership and communication, the soft skills, again, transferable skills. Use those to your advantage, because I'm going to tell it to you this way. You're going to graduate with your dental degree, and everyone is going to have those competencies and requirements checked off. Everyone's going to have those. However, every experience is going to be different because of the personal part that you bring to it, okay? So really consider a statement that your experiences have given you the opportunity to recognize the demands of the residency or the internship, and that you're dedicated or prepared to take on these new requirements of the new program. But make sure that the paragraph, similar to the cover letter that we're going to get into, make sure it has that bulk of information. Remember, I talked about managing meetings. We'll talk a little bit about how you did manage meetings. Maybe it was in your employment experience or in your leadership. And then at the very end of the personal statement, you simply want to reiterate what you're going to bring or the value to the residency program. So it's really important to be creative about the attributes that's going to support your candidacy for this. And when you say these like non-specific statements like I'm a hard worker or stretching the truth, I have a charming personality, that's going to backfire on a personal statement. So it's beneficial to give the specific example of the hard work or the perseverance that you had through your dental school years. And that, to me, gives more credibility to you, and the personality when you write these personal statements are going to stand out. Okay, so now we're up to part 2, improving a cover letter. I always say that this is the compliment, because this is where you can talk about those skills that I told you not to put in the resume. So before we really get into the cover letter, we have to understand the purpose. And for me, a cover letter is going to be that first opportunity to impress the hiring managers. But on the flip side, it can be the first opportunity to disappoint them, and we don't want to do that. So really, what is the cover letter? It's this window into your communication and people skills, your work habits, and yes, your enthusiasm is going to come through very, very strongly through the cover letter. And it's going to also explain what you can do for the practice, not what your needs are all about. So I present to you then my top 5 tips. That's according to me, okay? So tip number 1, you want to match the qualifications to the job requirements. If you keep sending the same cover letter, then you're doing it wrong. A good cover letter is actually going to be personalized to each specific job. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to start over every single time. You can reuse pieces of the letter, really the body of the letter, but make sure that you change the letter to match the position that you're applying for.
I have a question about that. If you're just applying to like GPR programs, do you need to change the letter each time since they're all kind of the same?
It depends. Are you applying to each individual GPR program, or is it through a match process where they get one statement for all of the programs? Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
You'll customize it, but in a sense, generalize it. So you'll say, I'm really excited, as a 4th-year student at whatever dental school you're going to, I am completing my clinical year and really looking forward to my next step, an internship or residency within your program. So it's sort of customized, but general. And then you want to get into why you're picking a program, why you're doing a residency. You know, I'm looking to gain more confidence and I really am passionate about oral surgery. So that's where it starts to get customized. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So you want to include in your cover or even your personal statement, include the right or the relevant experience. Okay. So if, let's say, it's an oral surgery residency program, or maybe an orthodontics program, if you have any orthodontic experience, you want to explain that particular relevant experience in the letter, or in, again, the letter I say is going for the employers, and the personal statement to the residencies or GPR. You're also gonna, tip number 2 is researching the facility, because when you look at the facility to see what they're doing or how they are received by some of the reviews or whatnot, the research is going to give you an idea of the practice and the culture. So be sure to think about that as you're looking through the materials or whatever social media or the feeds that you see. Even on LinkedIn, a lot of the schools will have a LinkedIn profile under a company or an organization. This is a really important tip. Always address the letter to an actual person. When I see "to whom it may concern," to me, that's a big disqualifier, because it shows to me that you didn't really take the time to research who the letter should go to. And it's sort of like the same with "Dear Sir, Madam." So for me, that's a real hard pass. So if you don't know who the hiring manager is, check the company website. Again, look at the research that you're finding out. Or you can reach out to human resources and ask for the name. Now, sometimes, I'm going to admit it, you sometimes just can't find the right person, or it's more of a team. Address the letter to what the advertisement states. So if it's selection committee, "Dear selection committee members." The next tip, I know that you have some really great experiences, and I'm telling you to put the experiences into the cover letter, but don't put the same thing that you wrote on the resume and regurgitate it. I want more details that's going to illustrate how, you know, you're going to bring this information or this to the job. Expand, as this says, on your accomplishment. So you want to explain the experience in much greater detail than the resume, and then highlight maybe how you strengthened that skill, or you developed that skill. What skill? Just think about really the skills that you developed or strengthened, and that could be a paragraph in and of its own. Maybe you your collaboration skills and knowing how to work with a team that really helped during your research project. And my last tip, again, same thing. I always tell people that, oh, whoops, I don't know what happened there. Oops. Well, you know what? We're going to show you an example of this. My apologies. We're going to show you an example of how you can expand on the paragraph. So here again, remember I said not to just sort of list, I'm a hard worker, I'm creative, but you want to expand on it. So this person says, I'm highly sensitive when interacting with patients, and my organizational and record keeping skills are exemplary, and I have a wide range of experience, and it would be my pleasure to share the dedication. No, we're going to change this instead. So highly sensitive when interacting with patients. I'm adding more to it. You know what your patients are like when sometimes they're afraid of the dentist. So when they're in the chair, they could be very nervous or worried. How's this? You add just a little bit and it personalizes and makes you, it personifies who you are. Patients have thanked me time and again for my knowledgeable and calm demeanor in keeping their teeth and gums healthy and clean. My organizational and record-keeping skills are exemplary because I keep detailed, efficient progress notes on each patient. It really does change it up so that it's a little bit more, it's bulked up with a really solid example of what my skills are or what I strengthened. It's the value you bring. My last tip, as usual, is to proofread. And if you don't hear me, proofread and proofread. Nothing is going to turn off an employer more than grammatical errors or misspellings. So again, spell check or have someone else read your cover letter, okay? A couple of additional tips, because you're not just going to go with 5. I'm going to tell you that your cover letter should be no longer than a page. But then again, on the flip side, hiring managers are not going to want just one paragraph. So you really want to make sure that you pull them in with some detail. Font size. These people are not taking out their magnifying glasses to read your text that is in, like 10 font or 9. So make sure it's like 11 or 12. That's usually a good size. And again, depending on the font. As I said before, let your mom and dad read it. Let the hunky boyfriend read it. Let the girlfriend or roommate read it, but just please have people read your materials because they're going to provide suggestions that maybe you have not yet considered. So you want to ask them, does my letter sell me as the best person for the job? Does it pull you in when you're reading it? Do I have enough examples? So really just think about that. Okay. My part 3 is coming up. So you put in your resume, you put in your cover letter, and sometimes you're going to get rejected. And then sometimes you're going to get this. Of course, I could come in for an interview. So what do we want to do? I'm going to give you some tips before the interview. I'm going to take you on some tips during the interview, okay? And of course, after. Just like we did the cover letter, we're going to research the organization before the interview. And you're going to tailor your accomplishments maybe to the position. And don't forget to also prepare your own questions. That's really important. Practice answering some questions out loud or do a mock interview. I know with our vet students, I always conduct some mock interviews when I know students are going on an interview. And it's really important because it's not only the communication in the words out loud, it's also the nonverbal communication. We'll talk about that in a minute. You also want to have a salary in mind, but whatever you do, that first interview, unless they mention it, it's off the table. Don't mention salary. Don't talk about salary. Don't bring it up. Just have a salary or more so a range of a salary in mind. And there are salary calculators, cost of living calculators online for dentists. So that could really be a very, very useful resource for you. Okay, fast forward, it's the day of the interview. What are we going to do? We're going to shake hands. If you're too weak with the handshake, lack of confidence. If you're too strong in a handshake, it's overcompensating. What do? Just a firm handshake. Confidence is the key here. And of all things, whatever you do, don't check or answer your cell phone. Put it in do not disturb mode because you'd be surprised how many people actually forget to do that. It's just a little tip that I've found when I've been in interviews and someone else's phone is ringing. It's a little jarring to the rest of the committee. You want to always maintain eye contact and listen carefully to little details and questions that they ask. Okay. Now, sounds pretty simple. We talk about that non-verbal communication. I was once in a meeting where someone was twirling their hair, someone else was twisting the rings, someone was strumming fingers, someone was putting food in their mouth. It's all evidence when you see this, biting fingernails, strumming fingers. That's evidence to me that you're not maybe going to work well under pressure. And that's without even saying hello. That's just walking in through the door. So when you look at this, when you're biting your lip, it perhaps gives you an anxious feel. All right, it's giving off an anxious vibe, or maybe you're shifting in your seat. You're either restless, you're bored with them, slouching, crossing arms, meaning don't talk to me. All of these could be very interesting body language for them to be looking at. So you want to make sure that even if you hold a pen in your hand just to hold it and not play with it, just so that your hands are in front of you, or a glass of water at the side. So all of these different things can work so that you're not fidgeting. And that's really where we want to go with this. You don't want to be fidgeting. A couple more tips. Don't give canned answers. That's why I'm saying to you, practice the answers. And if it's something, let's say they talked to you about one of the dental experience and it was really positive, what's really good is your enthusiasm and a smile is going to cross your face because it's something that maybe you're proud of, or maybe you want to talk about an accomplishment that you had that you're proud of as well. So because of that, a smile, and all of a sudden it exudes during the interview. Now, if they press you for a negative experience, flip it around, okay? Don't put anybody under the bus. Don't drag, as it says here, a former employer through the dirt. Just speak positively. You know, if they say, oh, did you have an employer you didn't get along with? Well, we may not have had we may have had different perspectives, but at least we really tried to listen to the next person. And so you're taking it from a negative to a positive. Now, the other thing, here's another example. Maybe I had issues meeting deadlines. So I'm going to explain to, excuse me, the person how I created a timeline and how maybe I worked backwards from the deadline so I could successfully complete the project by the deadline. So that could really help. Again, have these little anecdotes ready. If they ask, how about a strength? Talk about an experience that you really learned, or I was really able to talk with individuals during the treatment room and calm them for a much better experience. Maybe you do a lot of informed, and it's important that you establish that rapport with your patient when they're sitting in the chair, right? So you want to make sure maybe that could be something of your strength. Think about that Herculean strength. Maybe it's your perseverance through classes or whatnot. So just think about that. Answer the questions in an organized manner. So if they ask you a couple of questions, do you feel comfortable filling a cavity? Don't just say yes or no. Add to it, yes and, or no, but. Maybe it's something that they want you to learn, and maybe it's something about you have to pull tooth and you have to give them more information on it, informed consent. Walk your patients through it, right? That could also be a strength. Just think about it. Here are a couple of typical interview questions. A lot of the time is, why should we hire you? Again, think about these particular questions. These are more generalized questions, but they do want to get why you stand out. Why do you want to work at our ABC dental clinic? Where would you like to be in 5 years or 10 years? And what would a boss say about you? That's also something. Have an elevator speech ready. This is really a 1-minute overview of who you are, maybe what you're currently doing, and what you do in your free time. It's kind of like the small little bio that Amanda had given at the very beginning to introduce me. I gave you a little bit about my schooling. I gave a little bit about what I'm doing now, and that I'm doing some curling, or what I'm doing outside of work, because work, as you know, or school is not 24/7, nor should it be. Okay. It's really a pitch. Your elevator speech is really an advertisement. Think about your patient management skills. Are you a team player? Do you think critically? Are you a problem solver? These are the kinds of things that they do like to hear, okay? But I also want to go into some dental related interview questions. So again, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're going to have a lot of individuals going for the same job with the same degree, a dental degree. So the employer is not just looking for the technical skills, they want to find out if you're a good fit. Again, do you have the communication skills? By asking, what's your most memorable patient encounter? They're going to hear about how you work with patients, how you have the behavioral ability to get along with people. Maybe they're going to ask, what about a patient from whom you learn the most? Maybe it was an emergency patient that you had. So you could talk about how you handle emergencies and how you work well under pressure. Why did you choose this particular field of dentistry? They may even ask you something, and especially after the pandemic, we've all been thrown into a tizzy with this pandemic in the last 3 years. Nobody's going to counter that. They may even ask you how you see the delivery of dental care evolving within the pandemic, and maybe what you learned from the experience. So just think about some of these questions and have some answers to these questions at the ready. Again, not canned, but just think, and everybody's questions and answers are going to be very different. Now, one other thing I do want to talk to you about is asking them questions. So if you ask questions, that is going to signal to them that you're taking this interview very seriously and that you're genuinely interested in this position. So let's see. Okay, so here are some questions that you can use. Let's see, other questions. Make it personal. What are the biggest challenges in that your clinic faces? What will my role be as a team member in tackling those challenges? Another good question would be, put it back on them, right? They're asking you about your skills and they're asking you about your values. Put it back on them. What skills and values do you consider critical to this position, for someone to succeed? And instead of asking, just simply, what's the culture like? Where they're going to give you a canned answer back. Oh, well, we're a family community. No. Ask them their personal experience. Everyone, come on, even me. We love to talk about ourselves. So ask, instead of what's the culture like, ask, what do you like most about the company culture? So now they're going to start talking about maybe when they first came to the company. And then it really starts, again, a really nice dialogue where you're not just ending the conversation, sorry, I don't have any questions. You certainly can ask if there's continuing education and professional training beyond what you're doing, because if you ask a question like that, you'll come across as proactive and dedicated to becoming the best dentist that you can be. And it really tells, it'll give you really this insight into whether or not the company places an emphasis on mentoring and coaching, something that we're really looking for these days when we just start out in our first employment job or even a residency. Couple of things not to ask about: salary, time off, benefits. You know what? If it's a second interview, they will bring that up. Okay, but don't bring it up right now or at the very beginning. And try not to ask information that could be found on a Google search. Don't ask how quickly you can be promoted, and don't put in any gossip that you heard about the company. It's also important not to ask whether the company monitors email or internet usage while you're on the job. So as you're thinking about, as we're going to be coming to the conclusion of this, I promise you, and we'll do lots of questions and answers. But when you're thinking about what is your strength, what is your weakness, what was some of those questions that I had from early on, like, why should you want to work here? Why should I hire you? What would your boss say about you? I would put it in the star response, or you create the situation, or you create the context for the story. You explain a little bit of detail, what was required of you, what actually you did, and then the result, how the situation played out. Because when you put it in this context, it really creates a whole story for them. And again, personality for you comes out. So a lot of the time, I don't know how many are on this conversation where you're asking about if you are 4 years in, how many years you're in, if you went straight from undergraduate, or if you came out and you're a non-traditional student. So some people are asking, what if I don't know, sorry, if they're asking experiences, just think about all the relevant experiences to the question that they're having. Now, here's a dilemma. If I don't know the answer to a question, or I need to think about it for a moment, here's some good solutions for you. You have a glass of water. It's okay to take a glass of water and take a moment to drink the water. Processing the question, and that way you can also respond. That's an interesting question I've not been asked before. If you take the water and you drink it, it gives you a moment to process, and then you can say, that's an interesting question I've not been asked before. Let me take a moment to think about it. It's okay to say that. And if the question is not clear, certainly ask again for some clarification. So you have your interview, and sometimes, whoops, that went backwards, sorry. Sometimes you're going to be rejected, like we talked about, but imagine if this happens, you're going to feel so good if you get that hiring phone call. It just puts everything in perspective, all the hard work that you've done, putting your so-called package together, your resume, your cover letter, your interview, you're the package now, and it really speaks for you. So at that moment, I'm going to stop here. And I hope this was helpful. I hope that for me, if you come away with 2 or 3 tips that you can use, or strategies or hacks to really take care of your resume and your materials in a nice cohesive package that complements itself, I'm going to be thrilled. I'm here now to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, I am here to answer. You can unmute yourself. Feel free to write a question in the chat. I can't believe I covered everything.
Thank you for this. This is really helpful. I had a question, and it's something I struggle with a lot. It's when they ask you, what would you say is your weakness? Could you give an example of how you would go about it without being sounding like that is the biggest weakness, or sometimes how we just try to turn it around and it sounds like you're not really giving a weakness and it's a strength?
Yeah, so maybe if you were having trouble, for example, I would do something very basic. What you don't want to do is get carried away so that they're looking so negatively at you, right? You want to take something, all right, maybe it's negative. Maybe it was talking with patients, okay? Maybe you could have been, let's say, you really don't have that communication, for example, with a patient. And so you really want to be able to establish that rapport. Well, how am I going to do that? Let me ask questions to the patient. I want them to feel very comfortable in the chair. So before, I could see that my patients were a little nervous, a little jittery. I'm a 4th-year student, they don't know me. And I feel that that was a weakness of mine. So I really started working on trying to establish that rapport and really try to get to know the individual, and maybe try to take their mind off of what I'm doing, and maybe just start asking questions about them so that they could feel more comfortable in the chair. Or maybe, before, when I first sat my patients in the chair, I just had them open up and I didn't explain what I was doing, and I was meddling in their mouth and they're really nervous. Well, I started explaining what it is that I'm doing, and now my patients really are very happy with me because they feel very comfortable with me. because I'm explaining step by step what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I turn my communication or my, where I didn't have the rapport with the patient before, I'm now having that trust that they can trust me and feel comfortable in the chair. Do you see where I'm going with that? It's a bit, you have to nuance it a bit, right? And even with the deadline, you can even pick something like, perseverance. Take the negative and put it to your strength. Well, I used to be so down because I couldn't, be able to handle all of the pressure. And I realized if I step back, I take a breath, I take time for myself, I'm doing yoga, I'm taking time for myself that I could be good to my patients. That's another, at first I just was studying 24/7 and I realized I can't do that. I have to be good to myself. That's a good way. That's another turnaround. I'm being good to myself so I could be good to my patients. You're not talking about selfishness. You're being good to yourself. That's another way. Does that make sense? Like these examples, I know I'm sort of giving a few different ones.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Happy to answer them. I could pass this on to Amanda, who has a few announcements to make for the PDA. But I'll be sticking around for a little bit after if you have other questions for me.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Caryn, for your wonderful presentation. I hope everybody feels a little bit more comfortable with writing their CVs and resumes and with interviewing. We are hosting on April 4th at 7 p.m. a virtual interviewing tips webinar as well. And that will include Dr. Calcaterra featuring Dr. Kayla Klingensmith. They will be doing some role playing as well during that. So if you would like to register for that tonight, there is a QR code on the screen. So feel free to register then. You should also be receiving emails about it in the near future. And then also we do have a connections mentoring program. If anyone is interested in being connected with a mentor based on specialty, location, or practice type, you can visit our website at padental.org/connections or email sjm@padental.org and Sarah will be able to connect you with a mentor. The next slide, Caryn. Thank you all for attending. I'm so glad you could all make it. There will be an opportunity to receive an e-gift card for filling out a post-event survey. So keep an eye out on your email as well. You will be receiving that tomorrow. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email is arb@padental.org. And thank you again, everyone, for attending. And if there are any more questions, feel free to ask them now. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your night and a great week.
Thank you for coming.